Josh Grizzard was officially introduced as the Buccaneers' new offensive coordinator. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, all one word. And you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Lots to discuss following Josh Grizzard's introductory press conference as the new offensive coordinator of the Buccaneers, as well as some promotions along the Bucs staff and addressing some rumors that I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask about regarding Myles Garrett. That is all coming up on this show. But let's start with some of the interesting moments of Grizzard's time with the media. So the big thing that has Bucs fans and players most excited about this hire is the continuity, right? The fact that they aren't starting from scratch again. They can build off of what they did last year. Obviously, Jay Grizz is going to bring his own flair to the offense, but it isn't an entirely new system. So what's the goal for Grizzard? He was asked about how he plans to improve the offense, and he said, quote, "The continuity of having the staff and the players together is the most important part because we can go from installing an offense to naming plays, route concepts, and halfback footwork to just know now. Once we hit the field, that's the base level. What we did on the fundamentals, we can now evolve to the next level of teaching coverages, D-line techniques. That way, we can now expand the scheme, continue to add from around the league, add from college, continue to put pressure on the defense as we try to score points. At the end of the day, as coaches, we need to be able to adjust to scheme. It could be on a yearly basis. It could be on a weekly basis to put the players in a position to score points. That's what we're tasked to do. And now having another offseason to be able to add to that and add different pieces, we feel like last year was just the foundation to be able to take it to the next level." End quote. These are the kinds of things that are going to be important heading into next season. As Grizzard talked about, the Bucs are already starting on step 2 instead of having to go back to the starting line. They have the foundation. They have the verbiage. They have the building blocks of what they can become based off of last year. It's on him now to take them to the next level. Of course, not losing key players for long stretches due to injury is going to help them be more successful, but that's what's so great about this move. They are already set up for success, and Grizz just needs to get them to that next plateau. One of the ways he can do that is, of course, getting to have Chris Godwin back in the fold next season, and that's something he was asked about. Somebody said, are you going to be, pushing to bring Chris Godwin back? And Grizz said, quote, "I love Chris. As you guys know, Chris is as good of a human being and football player as you're going to be around. He was a huge asset to us last year, being a coach on the field and playing all of those different roles. I think he was leading the league in catches, yards, and yards after catch when he got hurt. I love Chris to death. But Jason and Todd have a proven track record with the roster here, so I'm going to let those guys handle that." Obviously, he wants Chris back, and it's more up to Jason and Greeny than it is Jason and Bowles. I don't think there's a world where a NFL head coach doesn't want Chris Godwin on their roster. So I don't think there's going to be any pushback from Todd Bowles, but it'll be on the front office guys and the cap wizards to get that thing figured out. That said, Grizz certainly is going to want Godwin out there as part of this offense that he's looking to make even more dangerous than last year. And if you want to make the offense better than the top 4 in rushing and the top 4 in passing, it would make a lot of sense to let a lot of sense to let one of the best weapons in the league walk away. It helps with your cap situation to bring him back. It helps open things up across the board for your offense when you can put him out there with Evans and J-Mac and Bucky. So why would you handicap yourself by letting him leave? It all makes way too much sense for Chris Godwin to return to the Buccaneers in 2025. Of course, it's not solely up to the Bucs. Godwin has a say in all of this, and he isn't going to short himself or his family either. So when two sides want the same thing, it's easy to get deals done. It's obvious the Bucs want him back. I would think that Chris and Mariah and their family want to stay in Tampa. It'll just be about finding a deal that works for both sides and getting it done before he is able to hit free agency. With that said, if Godwin does leave, Grizz has plenty of confidence in Jalen McMillan to grow in year 2. He was asked about McMillan's late surge and what clicked for him late in that 2024 season. And Grizz said, quote, "For one, he had to get back from being hurt. He had the hamstring issue and he was out for a couple of games. But what really took off for J-Mac was the practice execution becoming the game reality, in that he was executing at a high level in practice and treating it like a game. So therefore, there's confidence to throw him the ball in the game. Then when you have success at it, when you go back to game plan the next week, it's what can we do to get the ball back in his hands again? When that starts to snowball in a good fashion, you saw his season take off. The goal now is to continue where he left off, and now he's someone that we can rely on and get the ball in his hands as much as possible," end quote. That's going to be the biggest thing, is how long into 2025 will it take to see the McMillan that we had for the last 2 months of 2024? If it's right out of the gate, that's a really, really good sign. If it takes a little while again, I'm not so sure that he's going to wind up being in the Evans or Godwin category of receiver for the next few years. Of course, I think it'll be a more consistent season from McMillan. Again, injuries played a big role. Adapting from the college game to the NFL game played a big part, but he and Baker really started to gel that second half of the season. You saw his confidence increase week by week. So if I had to put money on it, I would say that McMillan is going to be a big part of this team in 2025, and he's going to be a big part of this offense for years to come. However, Grizzard is focused on the number one way to win games. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. The Kansas City Chiefs are 1.5-point favorites over the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59 with an over-under of 48.5. The favorite to win MVP is Patrick Mahomes at plus 120, followed by Saquon Barkley at plus 250, and then Jalen Hurts at plus 370. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning. Then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. So make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. How many times have I or David or Evan or anyone else to ever appear on this show say that the game is won and lost in the trenches? We're probably at about 100 times, give or take, a couple dozen. Jay Grizz knows that too, and he made it clear that he was putting an emphasis on that simple fact to help take this team to the next level. First, when Grizz was asked about the offensive line, he said, quote, "I would say in this interview process for myself last year, I hadn't watched a ton of the Bucs, but one of the first things you see when you turned on the tape was when I was deciding to take a look at the roster here was how talented the O-line was. Being able to add Ben Bredesen, being able to add Graham Barton through the draft was huge. Those guys set the tone. Like we talked about what we want to hang our hat on, which is run the ball and being physical. And those guys embody that. So from a day-to-day basis, seeing the work they put in, players-only meetings, quarterback-player meetings, halfback, quarterback, O-line meetings, that's how you want it to be built. And that's a testament to Jason Licht and how he's built this thing, end quote. He really doubled down when talking about his coaching philosophy. And he said, quote, "At the end of the day, we want to be physical. We want to be physical because the trenches win. When you're able to run the ball and you're able to press on a defense for 4 quarters, that's what wins ball games. We also want to be multiple. It could be a week where we need to throw the ball more or we need to run the ball more. Like last year, the guys get hurt, and how do you have guys step up? We want to attack, and through that, it's back on the players to do their part. With the scheme you saw last year, we were able to change plays at the line of scrimmage. We were able to change things in the low red zone. By doing that, we put the pressure on the defense. But it's the players who have to put the work in during the week so that you can do, that and not just go call a play and say, hey, we're going to run it here and see what happens, end quote. This brings us to a question from Insider Lakita, who texted in to say, I am quite impressed listening to Grizzard at today's press conference. Do I understand correctly that being more involved with regard to the O-line planning and procedures is a new addition to his duties? If so, how comfortable are you with his ability in that area? Yeah, Grizz is going to have his hand in everything, and I'm extremely confident that he's going to be able to do the job. Otherwise, I don't think that Jason and Todd hire him as the offensive coordinator. But that's also why he's surrounding himself with smart people and not completely overhauling the offensive staff. Jacksonville fans wanted to whine and cry and say the Bucs are a terrible organization for blocking their coaches from getting better jobs and raises because the Bucs rejected Jacksonville's requests to interview offensive line coach Kevin Carberry and assistant offensive line coach Brian Picucci, who remain on the staff and then were promoted and given raises on Thursday. So Carberry is now the run game coordinator and offensive line coach, while Picucci is also offensive line coach. These two were instrumental in the development and improvement of the Bucs offensive line this past season. So Grizzard's involvement in that area is going to be one of constant collaboration with Carberry and Picucci. He knows that they're great coaches and that they know what they're doing. That's why in the press conference, he said it was instrumental in bringing them back. So he isn't going to overstep and tell them to change things when he already knows that what they did last year was working in building up the strength of the offensive line. But you do want your OC to be involved in every aspect of the offense, from the blocking schemes to the routes to the development of the running backs. Every little thing the offensive coordinator needs to have his hand in, but then you also want him to trust the position coaches to do what they're hired to do. And I think that's kind of where the continuity of the offensive staff, retaining Carberry, retaining Picucci, blocking those guys from going to Jacksonville, that's why it was so important. Now, you had former tight ends coach and run game coordinator, or maybe it was pass game analyst. I can't remember his exact title now, but John Van Dam is no longer with the Buccaneer staff. He let his contract expire. He has joined Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. That's a loss that the Bucs are willing to absorb. They were not willing to absorb the losses of Carberry or Picucci because of how improved that offensive line was. I love that Grizzard is going to have his hands in there. He's going to be, involved in that development, in that scheming, because that's what you want from your OC. He needs to oversee everybody on the offensive side of the ball, but he also needs to have a clear, hands-on understanding of what each position coach is doing so that on Sundays, all of that comes together and they run an incredibly efficient offense like you saw last season. The final note on the press conference is Grizzard's final remarks when he was asked what his message to Buccaneers fans is, and he said, quote, "I'm fired up. You guys know the foundation that's in place. We didn't come here to go to the playoffs and lose a home game. So we're trying to take it to the next level and trying to bring a championship back to Tampa. And I'm fired up to be here and try to lead this unit down the road." Honestly, you cannot say it any better than that. Addressing a rumor that's been floating around, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life that you want to rewrite, or a plot twist that you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide your journey. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries or tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you develop skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you've never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can make all the difference in how you navigate life's up and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Sorry, I feel a cold coming on. I'm not going to be able to hold out that wrapping up like I normally do. But, we're battling through. It's the off season. It's wintertime. Colds are going to happen. But I have had a couple of insiders text me about this. I've had a couple of DMs on Twitter asking me about this. I've had people, that I know text me or message me and ask me about this. So I figured I might as well address it. I was going to try to avoid talking about Myles Garrett on this episode because I've talked about him in every episode for like all week. But there is a rumor floating around on social media that Myles Garrett has named his preferred trade destinations and that the Bucs are on that list. The list being circulated is the Bills, Commanders, Eagles, Cowboys, Bucs, 49ers, and Chiefs. I know there are some Bucs social media accounts and pages that are running with this information and they're posting it. But here's the thing. I cannot find any verifiable confirmation about this rumor. I have searched social media. I have searched articles. I have watched as many of Myles Garrett's interviews from Radio Row this week that I could find. And there isn't a single thing that I have come across that confirms this preferred trade destination speculation. We all want the Bucs to be in on Myles Garrett. It would be great if Myles Garrett wants to come to Tampa. But this is when you cannot believe everything that you see on the internet. Usually, we don't have to have this disclaimer or this conversation until closer to March and the start of free agency, and then it intensifies as we get closer to the draft. People are going to throw all kinds of crap out on social media in the hopes that they are right and they can try to get some sort of fake clout for being right. People are going to throw out multiple reports about the same player and then delete old tweets so they have a timestamp about being the first to report it. I just caution all of you. Do not believe everything you see. Do not believe everything that you hear unless it comes from a verifiable source. By that, I'm talking about Rick Stroud, Pewter Report, Greg Allman, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Tom Pelissaro, Mike Garafolo, Peter Schrager. There's multiple people, Jeremy Fowler. There are multiple people out there that are going to give you good information. Do not just assume because a Twitter account tweeted it out that it's true. I spent quite a while, far more time than was probably necessary to try and discover where or when he gave out this list in the context in which he gave it. There is nothing outside of an NFL rumors account on Twitter that has posted this list and then various other people running with the same list. It's basically wishful thinking on the part of most of the people sharing that information. But I think it's safe to say that Garrett's preferred destination list is nothing more right now than unsubstantiated claims. Maybe that changes over the course of the week. Maybe we do have a verifiable source confirm that list. But for right now, take a step back and do not assume that that is 100% guaranteed factual information. I do my best to bring you the honest truth on every one of these shows. And when I see stuff like that, when I have insiders texting me, when I have my DMs blowing up, about this kind of thing, I'm going to do everything I can to try to verify the information. I could not verify it. Couldn't do it. It's just not out there. So take a deep breath, take a step back, let this whole thing play out. Because as I said on, I believe it was my show with Evan earlier this week, I think I said it on yesterday's show as well, I don't think this is going to be a trade that gets done early in the process. I don't think if Myles Garrett gets traded, it's going to be when the open negotiating window, opens up right before free agency or on draft night. I think this is a situation where they're going to hold on. They might have a trade in principle agreed to, but it won't become official until after June 1st because of the amount of money that it's going to cost if they trade Myles Garrett beforehand. With all of that said, let's shift gears a little bit. Trey Hendrickson was talking to Pat McAfee about the trade speculation that he's dealing with and how he felt that the front office's comments about not being able to pay everyone top dollar at their position was kind of about him. So he seems to feel like he is going to get traded. Now, Hendrickson went on to say that all he wants is to win a Super Bowl for the city of Cincinnati. And if the way that he contributes to that is getting them a pile of draft picks and those guys go on to contribute to a championship, then he's done his part. He wants to stay in Cincinnati, but he, more than that, wants to see them win a Super Bowl. So it seems as though there will be some sort of bidding war for the services of Trey Hendrickson. The Bucs should absolutely be involved there. He isn't going to cost as much as Myles Garrett is in terms of pick compensation to the Cincinnati Bengals or in terms of the contract extension that he would get. He is a player that is immediately going to improve your defense. He has 17 and a half sacks in back-to-back seasons, double-digit sacks in 4 of the last 5 years. That's the kind of dude that you want to go out and get. And come on, he was born in Orlando. He went to college at Florida Atlantic. He went to high school at Apopka. Send this man home to Florida, Cincinnati. I know you don't want to send him home to the AFC teams in the state in Jacksonville or Miami. So send him home to Tampa. Orlando's what, like an hour and a half away? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've had to drive from Tampa to Orlando or Orlando to Tampa, but it's not far. Send this man home. And you can probably do it for a day 2 pick and then maybe another day 2 pick in 2026, or you do a day 2 pick in 2025, a day 3 pick in 2026. It's not going to cost you the first rounder minimum that Myles Garrett is going to cost. Garrett could be 2 firsts. Could be a first and a third, could be a first and a second, could be 2 firsts. But Hendrickson is not going to garner that much draft pick compensation. And when you take a look at the Bucs money situation, of course, Light and Greeny, they're great at making the cap work. They're great at stretching out the money and all that. But Hendrickson's not going to get over $30 million a year the way Myles Garrett is. He is a year older. That's going to play into it. But you make a play for Trey Hendrickson, now all of a sudden you have a bona fide alpha elite edge rusher joining your team for what, the next 4-5 years? He's not going to be an elite pass rusher all the way up until his final season of his career. We saw that, with numerous guys like Jason Pierre-Paul, Simeon Rice, Shaq Barrett. These guys kind of taper off as they get a little bit older, but you're getting an alpha edge dude for a minimum of 3 years, probably 4, and then you're going to have him on the roster for probably 5 years. That's a deal that needs to get done. I would love for Myles Garrett to join this team, but I think that Trey Hendrickson is probably the smarter play for the Buccaneers when it comes to how much it's going to cost to get him and sign him. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Send in any questions that you have to the Locked On Bucs DMs on Twitter. The DMs are open. Send those in if you have anything that you want to hear talked about. On tomorrow's episode, we are going to talk a little bit about Super Bowl 59 because that's this weekend, and it's the last football game we're going to get to watch until August. Let's go ahead. I know nobody wants to see the Chiefs win. Nobody wants to see the Eagles win. I still maintain, as Bucs fans, you should root for the Kansas City Chiefs because there's a lot of bad blood with the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, it's kind of cool if the Chiefs win that the only team to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they would still be the only team to prevent the Chiefs from scoring a touchdown in a playoff game in the Patrick Mahomes era. Again, little bit of bragging rights for Bucs fans if the Chiefs win on Sunday. But send in those DMs with any questions that you may have. Insiders, you can go ahead and text me your questions. If you want to become an insider, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And of course, make sure that you are following on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.